Welcome to ShiftWatch. I'm your host, Starbuck. In this episode, there's been much speculation surrounding manipulating the weather and many theories about the causes. Because I believe it's important for every being to understand what energetic changes are taking place on the planet, it's imperative to understand the causes from a reason-based approach. The last few years, I've been compelled to understand the cosmic forces at work and how they affect our planet. Only then, after watching the elevation in catastrophic events, did I correlate the solar storms as the cause of all manner of seismic activity, flooding, fires, extreme weather, and magnetic pole shifts. That energy coming from the sun is increasing in volume and frequency against the Earth's rapidly deteriorating magnetic field. We are currently in sunspot cycle 25, within solar maximum, and the scientific expectation is that we will be in this mode until 2026. I have great respect for Ben Davidson at Suspicious Observers and his tireless work researching and reporting on this topic, so I've decided to let him explain where our focus should be, as I agree the truth falls mostly in the center between the extremes. This phenomenon isn't going away anytime soon, but the Earth's evolution to her next stage is much sooner than most of you are prepared for. Then, after last week's 2 record-setting X-class flares, we just experienced 2 more in the X-class range that, even at rather low levels of intensity, caused significant geostorms with radio blackouts over the Pacific. This explanation should help connect the dots between the solar phenomenon and Earth's seismic activity. These conditions will only become more frequent and intense. Here is an update from Suspicious Observers. Next, most people aware of the Northern Lights or aurora borealis think of the phenomenon as beautiful waves of color and light. What they fail to realize is the amount of electromagnetic energy the Earth and all sentient life forms just took. This is what causes the seismic events that are happening. But if you're like me, I've been correlating physical discomforts when these things occur. Depending on where on the planet you happen to be when that plasma struck, you should feel the jolt as well. Regardless, the auroras are beautiful. And here is a once-in-a-lifetime experience by Scanner Guy in southwest Wisconsin, filming them directly overhead. Enjoy. And finally, here is a great resource I came across from someone who's been studying astronomy for years, explaining sunspots and our current situation.
It is important we are not only on the right side of science, culture, but that we are careful and intelligent rather than rash. So let's talk HAARP, weather wars, and spraying the sky. Let's begin with a key principle that will be as true here as it is anywhere else. The truth is always found in the middle of the loudest screaming, most extreme opposite sides of a story. Longtime viewers here know of many such examples, like how it's neither true that humans are causing deadly global warming, nor is our activity of no consequence to the planet. The truth is nuanced and involves degrees of impact and a few more players in the theater, like the sun's impact and Earth's magnetic pole shift, which is well underway. If you are newer here, how about the wild screams from the political realm, thinking the other side is pure evil? Obviously, the truth is more nuanced than either one of those options, even if it seems like the last few years have shown us it is closer to one side than the other. In the case here today, it is neither true that they control the weather, nor is it true that we can't influence or modulate the conditions. The truth is more nuanced. Let's begin with some words on HAARP. Only once did they ever turn it on full blast. It was visible on about 8 to 10 different detector types and had a minuscule impact on a high-pressure cell. You cannot hide something like HAARP in this day and age from ionosondes, radar, Schumann resonance, and several more. We know when they use it, and they just plain suck at impacting the weather, if that is even their goal, which it probably isn't. During this time, it was a top-level secret classified project. When they realized it was a failure, they turned it into a limited hangout and psychological operation. In the span of 90 days, it went from a secret project to 6 books were released, a TV show about it on the History Channel, and it was the subject of speakers touring the country, quote, risking their lives. That's the single greatest example of a false story put into our community that has ever happened. Come on now, you're not going to fall for that, are you? Don't forget, the people we don't trust the most are actors and politicians. And who told you to be scared of HAARP? Jesse Ventura, politician and actor, handing us an enemy on a silver platter and then told us to go scream about it on the internet. On the topic of weather war, the fact is what we hear online is a bit overblown. There are lots of wish list documents you can find online, most from the military, but they are wish lists and often include some really crazy stuff. Operational products are another matter, and you need to remember, the real stuff they use is kept secret, and they're pretty good at that. They misdirect everyone else with what they make public. We see the fake stories and the failed products. Beyond the distraction documents they let us see, of course there are the patents, but why are so many in this realm abandoned? Well, it's for the same reason why 99% of abandoned patents get abandoned. They just didn't work. The story is, weather war is something they really want to own. They can do minor modifications, but nobody controls the weather. Spraying the sky is also requiring a nuanced view. First, are you talking about cloud seeding for rain or chemtrails, stratospheric injections for blocking the sun? They're two very different things and have very different risk profiles. I don't like either, but honestly, the cloud seeding at least has potential for good use. Chemtrails are just a terrible thing. There are dozens of peer-reviewed studies on the potential risks of blocking the sun, and including cascading reactions, far worse than what they call climate change. The main problem in this realm these days is that there are people online who think every line in the sky is a chemtrail. That's wrong too. There is so much more air traffic now with more efficient engines, adding that more homogeneous exhaust to a more turbulent environment by the greater chop effect of modern engines. Those all lead to more lines in the sky lasting longer than before, thicker than before. But also, veteran watchers here know that there is more atmospheric water vapor due to recent changes on our planet, more dust throughout the entire solar system, and more electrical energy in the atmosphere as the magnetic field has been weakening and letting in more energy from space. All of these things add up to more lines, thicker lines, longer lasting lines in the sky. It's not that chemtrails aren't real, it's that something else is being co-identified improperly. What you need to know is this: some rumors are real and some aren't. Some of the real ones are overblown. Some are real and can be used dangerously. Most importantly, they don't control the weather. They can influence and modify it to a very minor but often meaningful degree. They can't create chaos or stop it in its tracks. They can nudge and whisper. Please keep this in mind when you are online. And regarding Hurricane Milton, currently in the Gulf of Mexico, folks, it is peak hurricane season. Formations tend to occur, and that stinks, but it's what was forecast by pretty much everyone back in springtime. As for its eastward movement towards Florida, first, no, it's not that unusual. It is the prevailing direction of storms across the United States, by the way. And when it comes to Gulf hurricanes, the jet stream can drag an entire storm. It's exceptionally influential. And look at those upper level winds right now. Obviously, you see Milton is connected all the way up, and it is going to ride the jet stream to Florida. And no, they can't control the jet stream at all. If you remember one philosophy to go with these facts, it should be that you should suspect that our community is as targeted or more targeted with false ideas and stories than the wider population. We are harder to trick. They have a lot of limited hangout psychological operations going on us as well. Good morning, folks. Today we've got another X-class solar flare to see. It's made a big solar storm that's on its way to Earth. Of course, there's a big storm on its way to Florida, too. We'll go over the details here, and let's go ahead and start with what we've already got coming. So yesterday, we reported an X-class solar flare near the limb, with a wide burst CME. As Comet Atlas invaded SOHO coronagraph images, a big CME was visible coming off the right side that appears to have a halo component. We showed the Enlil spiral from NASA, showing the glancing below impact to Earth, and now the NOAA Enlil spiral is updated as well. It shows a slightly weaker CME, but still includes that glancing below impact to our planet. But it will need to be updated again here today, because last night another X-class solar flare erupted, this time from center disk sunspots. It reached X 1.8 on the flare rating scale, and SDO images show a massive coronal ripple and shockwave event. It's a big CME. And SOHO shows it too. If you can take your eyes off Comet Atlas, the halo event and static at the end of the frames are from the latest flare. That halo CME means the blast is definitely heading for Earth, so we've got a bigger solar wind event due in the latter half of the week. And the static, that's a proton storm. Overnight, the energy from the blast sent us into level 2 and nearly level 3 proton storm conditions. Another excellent chance for aurora coming up in the next few days. We'll update when we get more information. But also, folks, Hurricane Milton still amplified. No shortage of fuel as it heads for landfall within the next 24 hours. Outer bands already hitting. God protect those who couldn't leave the impact area in time. Shaping up to be one of the worst impacts in history. Hey folks, it is time for an update on the solar hurricane connection. The sun impacts tropical systems with solar flares, proton storms, and geomagnetic storms, and that is amplifying due to the magnetic pole shift. In this video, we're going to review the video from February breaking down the peer-reviewed science, then the video on Hurricane Beryl posted July 1st, and then a few quick words on Milton churning in the Gulf. Let's start with the science. When the sun unleashes a coronal mass ejection, a CME, and it impacts the Earth, it excites the magnetic field and triggers electromagnetic activity below throughout the atmosphere. This video is from NASA, and the purpose of the video was meant to describe some of the ways that the sun drives the winds and the ocean currents. It does this by impacting the direct heating of the atmosphere and the electric currents of the global electric circuit. But even NASA's video doesn't cover or even mention that this forcing extends to nearly every aspect of the weather. We have seen the hundreds of papers on how solar activity impacts wind, ocean activity, clouds, rain, lightning, snow, temperature, humidity, and so it should not be surprising that it also impacts the strongest storms in the world, the tropical systems, hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons. This was one of the key aspects of one of the articles we featured earlier today in the morning show. The electrical phenomena of the atmosphere is gaining more and more attention. Where it was once thought to all be about temperature directing pressure in the air masses, scientists now know it is a much more dynamic process. For those who are new here, in Chapter 5 of our textbook, there is a good deal of information about the sun's impact on major tropical storm systems, and extratropical storms for that matter. There are studies that confirm this connection with solar flares, solar wind data, solar energetic proton storms, and of course, geomagnetic storms from when the CMEs impact our planet. And as they discover this more and more, it extends to the extratropical regions and even severe thunderstorms over land. Many of you remember Ferris Wald, who won the National Science Championship for proving that coronal hole streams and tropical cyclones were related. A pretty amazing feat for a middle school student. And since our textbook came out, there have been several follow-up studies that only bolster the previously discovered connection between the sun and tropical systems. Ones like this have even suggested it's not just the formation and intensification of those storms, but they're likely tracks to landfall that are impacted by the sun. Other studies dive deep into specific regions of the ocean and find all the same, while also driving into the mechanistic action of how it all works. So this morning's paper, while exciting to see, was not unexpected. Indeed, there are no countervailing studies in the last several years questioning this connection, and yet the sun's impact on storms remains outside of all climate models. It's a shame. But whether it is a solar flare juicing up the atmosphere, the solar wind pressure forcing Van Allen electrons downward, or the geomagnetic storm activity spreading across the globe, the global electric up and down circuit becomes excited, and as we discussed in a video just a few days ago, that electric circuit activity impacts the pressure cells, wind, clouds, and more. Later this year, the sunspot cycle will be peaking as hurricane season rolls around in the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific, and we will all get an excellent opportunity to see just how much the sun works these great storms in real time. Well, it's hurricane season now. We had the first serious geomagnetic storm of the period on June 28th, and during its impact on the atmosphere, just as predicted, just as we've been showing for several years, it triggered the first serious hurricane. And serious doesn't really do it justice. It was the furthest east storm at this time of year to form, the earliest Category 4 on record in the Atlantic Basin, and the strongest to ever hit these islands. Furthermore, its pace of intensification is utterly unprecedented. As of midday today, it's still intensifying. So let's go a bit deeper on the background. The papers on solar storm forcing of tropical activity have been more numerous in the last decade than in the entire history of science that came before. Once the door was opened, it was like a flood, with literally every study looking at the topic finding the same thing. Solar storms impact the tropical systems in a significant way, with special attention being paid to the geomagnetic aspect. That's what we just had happen this past week. Studies have even gone back in time and found major correlations, like with Hurricane Katrina, the super outbreak in 2015 during a similarly strong solar storm surge, the triple storm system in 2017 that followed the largest solar storms of cycle 24, and even elsewhere in the Pacific, where Haiyan broke records on the heels of a powerful solar flare and magnetic crochet event in the atmosphere resulting from it. Also noteworthy, the tropical storm Chris has formed during this period this week, currently pounding Mexico. And by the way, the average third named storm of the year usually happens around early August. This has been the quintessential event we were talking about in literally every way you can slice it. Remember, every tropical storm is impacted by the global electric circuit, and every aspect of space weather affects that circuit. 4 months ago, we said to watch for major hurricanes to be triggered by solar storms, and that's literally what is happening as we speak. Solar maximum is in full stride. Hurricane season is here. Expect more in the months ahead. So folks, here we are again. Several X-class solar flares the last few days, including one last night, adding to the level 3 geomagnetic storm taking place. That's two of the biggest ways the sun impacts the tropics combined at the same time. And that's why Hurricane Milton went into record intensification and is one of the strongest storms on record today. These connections are very robust and they're getting tighter as the magnetic field weakens in the ongoing magnetic pole shift. We've been saying to expect this for years. We still expect it. And we expect the first Category 6 hurricane in the next few years as well. I'll see you in the morning for the Daily Show.
This is incredible. Look at this. I'm directly under a solar storm in, like I said, southwestern Wisconsin. Never gonna be doing this again. All the way around me. .360 degrees. Got a lot of red over there. Incredible amount of red. Now if I take the camera and point it directly up, this is what you see. So what I'm going to do, time lapse. I'm right under it. Is it cool or what? Completely surrounded by a solar storm. As much as I want to stay and keep filming, I gotta get home. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. And I am cold. Look at that. Probably never experience this again. Starting to fade a little here. It goes up. All centers. Right there. Pretty neat. Till next time.
Hi, and welcome to yet another installment of the Sagebrush Happy Hour Journal for October 3rd, 2024. Today, I want to talk about sunspots. So, I'm quite an astronomy fan and fanboy, I guess you would say. And this morning I got a notification that there was a X-class solar flare. And so what that means is that the highest class of a solar flare is the X-class. And this one is actually the highest magnitude solar flare in this current solar cycle. And it was at a level of X 9.1, which is pretty darn powerful. And here, I'll show you a picture here. This is from NASA. And that shows that solar flare. And so I went out today and I took out my favorite toy, which is my little C-Star S50 smart telescope. It's seen here. And then I went and put on a solar filter on its lens and took some pictures of the sun today. And so here's a nice picture of the sun showing all the sunspots that are on there right now. And so this is a really active period in our sunspot activity. This is what they call solar cycle number 25. And that basically we have a 11-year cycle in where the sun has more or less sunspots. And so we're on the kind of the up ramp of cycle number 25. And we're getting more and more sunspots and more solar activity. And also these solar flares, they cause what is called CMEs, or coronal mass ejections. And so that's when there's a solar flare, it sends radiation, which travels at the speed of light. So from the solar flare today, this morning, it hit our atmosphere, just a few minutes later after the actual solar flare, the radiation did. And that actually caused some radio outages over the Pacific. It basically ionizes the atmosphere and blocks low-frequency radio transmissions. And that radiation is also what can cause some other effects that might affect the electrical grid and something like that. But then, in addition to that, there's the coronal mass ejection, which sends out matter, which travels quite a bit slower than the speed of light. And so we'll be getting that matter from the coronal mass ejection and from that solar flare here in the next couple days, anywhere between 2 and 4 days from now. And so when that hits our atmosphere or hits our magnetic field, that is what causes the aurora borealis and all the atmospheric effects that we see from the sun. So that's our little science lesson for today and my journal entry. And cheers.